As John F. Kennedy once said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. The first character represents danger, and the second character represents opportunity. Today, we all know that the retail industry is constantly changing. And we saw that Marks & Spencer is struggling currently in China, not only due to the decreased profitability, but also because of its lack of awareness in the Chinese market, as well as the operational complexity it's facing in this specific market. In addition, the rise of e-commerce is actually changing the retail industry, and Marks & Spencer should actually decide on what to do specifically in China. And we strongly believe that with the strategy we are going to present to you today, not only will you be able to eliminate the danger you might face in the Chinese market, but as well capitalize and grab the different opportunities that this Chinese market actually offers you. We are the American University of Beirut, and we are gladly here to offer you our strong strategy. My name is Joelle. I will be going over the analysis, followed by my colleague Ramzi, who will be going over the different alternatives we have considered, as well as the financial implication of our strategy. And finally, my colleagues Peter and Christina will be going over the implementation of our strategy. So the main challenge today and the main question is, should Marks & Spencer remain in China and operate at a loss, or leave the Chinese market? And we identified different key concerns. The first one would be the operational complexity it's facing in this market. The second one is the brand recognition and the brand awareness. And finally, the rise of e-commerce and the different opportunities you can capitalize on. And we strongly believe that our strategy to market and share will help you decide on what to do exactly, as well as reach a 13% compound annual growth rate in revenue per store by 2021, a 2% market share in the Chinese e-commerce industry by that same year, and finally a 1% market share in the Chinese retail market by 2021. Now, if we look at the retail industry currently in China, usually foreign retailers enter China with a local partnership, and this gives them a competitive edge because they are more localized and they have a more regional presence. And currently, the retail industry in China has a CAGR of 12.5% in terms of sales. And there are actually two specific factors that are currently transforming the industry. And the first one would be the rapid shift in retail landscape with the high competition. And second, as I mentioned, the rise of e-commerce. So we believe that Marks & Spencer should actually adapt to the changes and grab the different opportunities that are faced in the retail industry in the Chinese market. So now if you look at Marks & Spencer specifically in China, as I mentioned, you are lacking brand awareness, and some of your stores are shutting down, and you are currently operating at a loss. However, you entered China not with the partnerships as some of your competitors. You opened with a company-owned stores, and this gave you a competitive edge because you retained full control of all your operations. In China, you offer two types of stores. You have the grocery business and the clothing business. And specifically in the clothing business, you want to position yourself in the middle between the luxury providers as well as the value providers. So this is where you want to position yourself in comparison to your competitors. But of course, before we create the whole brand awareness and before you decide on what to do in China, we have to help you know who to target and what your customers actually value. So we actually noticed that in the Chinese market, there is a mismatch between what you're offering and what the Chinese market is actually demanding. So we took the example of Lynette, who is actually 30 years old currently. So usually our customers are middle class. They're aged between 20 and 40 years old. They can be students as well as any worker. But what do they value? That is the main question. What do your customers today, what do they value? They value convenience, they value affordable luxury, they value local taste, and specifically and most importantly, personalization. So we believe that you should not only know who your customers are, that's the KYC, know who your customers are, but most importantly, understand your customers and what they actually value in order to be able to target them in an efficient way. So looking at the grocery market, you currently offer unique and pricey offerings, and you established a really luxury niche. However, your products are not known among the Chinese consumers. In addition to that, you have strong competition. We have the local retailers as well as the multinational who are as well entering China today. So you have to kind of reconsider your whole grocery market strategy. However, on the other hand, if you look at the clothing market, you are facing different issues in this business. Operation complexity, because the Chinese are relatively smaller in size. They value different colors, different sizes. You are facing a failed positioning, because you fail to position yourself in your consumers' mind in the way you actually want to be positioned in the Chinese market. And finally, the biggest question today is the entrance of fast fashion retailers such as Zara and Uniqlo, who are actually offering better opportunities to your consumers. In this specific market, there are two key success factors. One would be localization, and two would be the demographic targeting. So you should not only know who to target, but also understand your consumers and understand what they value and their preferences. And of course, you should draft a unique brand image and communicate your positioning in a really good way. So as I mentioned, e-commerce is actually changing today the retail industry. And today in China specifically, there is a 60% compound annual growth. So there's a really big growth in the online retail, and Alibaba is dominating the Chinese market. It's the leading e-commerce website today. We actually noticed that after the analysis that 75% of online shoppers are actually aged between 18 and 39 years old, as well as 78% of online payments are actually done by consumers who are aged between 20 and 39. So this might help you actually know who to target and what to do in order to reach them. So Marks & Spencer's should capitalize on this growth in e-commerce. And now I leave the floor to my colleague Ramzi to go over the different alternatives.
Thank you, Jawad. So, to briefly walk you through our thought process, before formulating our strategy, we took two alternatives into account. Basically, we either had to exit the Chinese market or turn around and enhance the business in terms of enhancing our profitability. So, to aid us in determining our decision, we took these few criteria into account to construct a decision criteria to reach a decision. The criteria we took are risk, profitability potential, and reputation plus publicity for Marks & Spencer. Concerning the exit strategy, we believe that it fares positive on the risk side, since it is relatively less risky than turning around the business. And profitability potential. Concerning profitability potential, it also fares negatively on that dimension, since you will miss out on the growing potential of the Chinese market. Also, concerning reputation and publicity, this is really about publicity for Marks & Spencer should it choose to exit this market. Concerning now the second alternative, which is turnaround, we believe that it is risky to some extent. However, it provides a huge growth potential, huge opportunities for profitability. Based on that, we allocated a few pluses to it. Concerning reputation and publicity, it's actually good for your consumers to know that you're not giving up on the Chinese market yet. And now, I'm going to leave the floor to my partners, Christina and Peter, to walk you through the implementation of our turnaround strategy. Thank you.
Well, we already talked about what we want to do and what you should do in order to enhance your company. But how are we going to do that? That's the big question. We realize that there are three major issues that you are facing right now, three major challenges. And we're going to tackle each challenge by itself. We have the operational complexity, which you can be solving by localization, and the brand recognition and the rise of e-commerce that you're going to be tackling by effectively target your customers, understanding your customers. So, let me walk you about the details of the localization. We realize that it's really important for you to be able to get relevant in China, to have a partner there, because they have all the local expertise and all the knowledge of the market, which is going to be very useful for you in order to succeed in China. So we picked 4 stores in China. We picked them stores that are relatively small in order for them to benefit from this partnership as well, because we need them to say yes, of course. And we consider the ranking, the country, and the number of stores. So we basically thought of Artimart, Jonghoi, H&A, and Woomart, because they have operations national. They have national operations, so they wouldn't be competing with you globally. And at the same time, we chose Jonghoi because of the ranking, the number of stores they have, the amount of sales they have, and also because of their producers in China, in contrast with Artimart. So, what is this partnership going to be about? We like I already said, we're going to be offering them access to the data analytics we have. We have a big data infrastructure from our customers globally, and as part of our implementation, we're going also to enhance this infrastructure. So we're going to be offering that to them, and in exchange, we will be getting expertise and knowledge, and as well as the supply chain logistics, in order to start manufacturing and producing in China through them. And the good thing about this partnership is that together we can achieve economies of scale, because we are both relatively small in China. Together we can share the costs and achieve this economy of scales in order for both to increase our profits.
So after we would have started the first part of the partnership with Jonghoi, we would first start by pilot testing for the first 2 years of the strategy, which would be 2019 to 2021, by growing the products locally and locally producing them. So the way it would work, basically, as our diagram shows, is that we have suppliers who would supply the middlemen who would get the product to us. But as my colleague will now show you, eventually after 2021, we hope to change this model and make it a more efficient and less tightly regulated model.
So what's the plan for the long term? By 2021, we are suggesting to implement a private blockchain. How would this work? Basically, I want to start saying what's the most important thing about this private blockchain. Because you are afraid to start producing in China because of the loss of control that you would be having and the loss of quality, this private blockchain would actually help you produce in China without losing any of your control over the suppliers and the quality of your products. So how this works is with a common ledger between all the parties involved, which will be involving your partner and the suppliers, and in that way you would all be connected to this common ledger with smart contracts, which are going to be part of recording every transaction made, and this by doing this you would have registered all the important manufacturing steps, and this way you will not lose control over the production process, including your suppliers, the middleman, which is going to be eliminated, and your partner, Jonghoi. So to summarize this pillar, in the short term, we're going to start producing locally with the help of our partner, Jonghoi, and in the long term, by 2021, we're going to start implementing this private blockchain with if Alibaba by that time has the platform and algorithms able to and the coding to produce this, we could consider partnering with them, but it would be a matter of time. As for the second pillar of our strategy, how are you going to understand your customers? This is really important. So, the best way to reach effectively your customers and to have an optimal position is to use artificial intelligence and machine learning. Because with the combination of these two, you're going to be able to predict customer trends and at the same time customize the products you're offering for each customer. And because you already have a small presence online, this customization can also be made online, which we're going to be explaining later. And we thought of doing this by Alibaba Cloud Services. And because there's also the concern of how are you going to target your customers demographically, this would also let you know which customers are buying online and where, and it could actually be a good forecast for where are you going to open your stores later.
So based on, as my colleague just said, the demographic data would actually help you learn where you can start to open your concept stores. What we mean by concept stores is a small location which would be a smaller investment than opening the full department store for you guys in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, where your customers could actually go into the store, feel the material, try on the article, get a feel for it, see if they like the texture, the size, and then eventually order the item and get it delivered to their house as they walk out of the store. We would. Alright, so for the marketing strategy, which would work mainly on rebranding and repositioning the brand identity and strengthening it for your customers in China, we would start by partnering with microbloggers. Microbloggers are basically bloggers who have, on average, a following between 5,000 to 20,000 followers. Why we chose microbloggers rather than bloggers and influencers? Because microbloggers are more targeted in their sense of their followers, and they can achieve better results in this case. So we'd use the microbloggers by giving them free products, as well as using them for videos, basically as on Taobao and Tmall, if we launch a new product, for example, or let them be seen with the products. And then we would have WeChat ads and broadcasts for our loyal customers, which would also link back to the loyalty program, offering them discounts and coupon codes, especially if they use Alipay or WeChat Pay. A quick example of how the loyalty program would work would be if they get the first purchase, they get 10% discount. If they refer it to others, they get 15%, and then eventually they would be getting points. Every 20 RMB would be 1 point, and then eventually every 200 points they get a gift. The gift would be basically suggested back with the AI and machine learning software that we suggested you use, since it would have a record of the previously looked items and past purchases, which would give the optimal gift for these customers. And now I'd like to leave the floor to my colleague Ramzi to go over our timeline and our financial implication.
Thank you. So what implications will our strategy have on our profitability? Starting with a general timeline, we believe that we're going to immediately start with the partnership. Local production will kick in 2019. Blockchain implementation will kick in on the long term starting 2021. So basically, we're going to walk you through our revenues, assumptions and numbers, costs and net present value. To start with the revenue assumptions, we assume that you currently have 0.01% market share in the Chinese retail industry. It translates to about $500 million. In 2017, number of stores is 5. And MS in the e-commerce industry is half a basis point in Chinese e-commerce, which translates to $128 million. Based on that, your baseline revenues are currently increasing at 12.5% CAGR. However, using our strategy with the projected growth rates, your incremental revenues will increase up to $740 million by 2021. And concerning the second revenue stream, which is the online, we believe that your projected revenues are going to grow in 2021 at 65% growth rate, which will result in $477 million. Now, since we're running a bit short on time, we're going to briefly walk you through our costs, and we can discuss them further in the Q&A. The costs for amount up to $3.5 million by 2021. IBM mostly is our most prominent cost, along with WeChat advertisement, and here are the assumptions for our projections. And next slide, please. Taking the incremental revenues and costs into account, this strategy will lead an incremental MPV of $7.69 million, taking an exchange rate of 6.25 renminbi to the US dollar. This will result in an incremental MPV of 48 million renminbi. And to take our financial analysis a step further, we decided to conduct a sensitivity analysis to project a best case and worst case scenario, taking two variables into account. The first is the growth rate modifier, and the second is the WACC, the discount rate. At a best case scenario of 140% growth rate modifier, at a discount rate of 4%, your incremental MPV will be 8.6. However, in the normal case scenario, which is based on our strategy, it will be $7.69 million. And now I'll leave the floor to my partner Joel to leave you with some concluding thoughts.
So in conclusion, we strongly believe that for you to answer the question to stay or to leave the Chinese market, you should adopt our strategy to market and share. And with our strategy to market and share, you will be able to reach 342 million revenues by 2021, as well as a return on investment of 34.5% by that same year. And remember, as Martin Luther King once said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. We thank you for your time, and we now are open to any questions you might have.
So, this is Q&A session.
Can I just clarify? Yonghui, when you presented the slide, it was presented as sort of ranking number 6, but it's got the fewest number of stores. So how come it is sort of ranking 6th, which is ahead of the other competitors who's got more stores than they have?
According to the case, the exhibits actually shows that it's ranking number 6 in the year 2013, which was the most recent data we had. But the sales rank, the ranking was actually based on the number of sales. So although it had the smallest number of stores compared to the others, it actually had the maximum number of sales compared to the other stores right after RMT.
Thanks.
How do you think about your strategy? I mean, talking about the financials, right? I mean, I like the way you present the numbers, but in terms of how do you think about revenue growth versus profitability? Because online should lead to a massive erosion in margins. How do you factor that in your analysis?
We believe that we're a bit conservative on our projections, since it's still relatively risky strategy for the short term. So we were conservative in our projections. We believe we're gonna able to capture around 2% of the market. Like, we took into account that Alibaba is a huge player, and there are many huge players. It's a very saturated market in China. So based on that, we were a bit conservative, and we came up with these numbers. And here by 2019, your current growth rates and in e-commerce, they're not so good. So basically in 2019 we projected 30% growth rate. However, by 2021 we projected, by the time that you enhance your value proposition, your growth rate will be 65%, which will beat the industry standard of CAGR, which is 60%.
I have a question for collectively the group. 65% growth rate, even by Chinese standards, that's astounding. You'd get us jumping in and investing in that. ROI 34.5%. When you combine those two figures, that's amazing. Marks and Spencer is renowned for being a bit of a dog. I'm sure you're all familiar with Boston Consulting Group Matrix, and that's where I would put it. Obviously, others in the industry will take a different view, but let's call it a dog. I'm a bit confused, so perhaps you can clarify. How do you take a dog in light of a squeezed middle, which is where your strategy analysis put Marks and Spencer, and come up with these percentages, given everything you've mentioned in your presentation is effectively reproducible by somebody else? The barriers to entry are relatively low. You've got major competitors. What's going to make this work?
In terms, okay, it's a dog, but we believe with our strategy, we're enhancing the value proposition. What they currently do is not locally relevant, and what we're trying to do is make the company more relevant to the market. And based on that, the customers would have increased. They would be enticed to use your products instead, because you're enhancing your value proposition.
Right. Ramsey, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Trying to sell scones, a Marks and Spencer staple in the United Kingdom, to the Chinese just doesn't work. Okay? The clothing issue, I think Peter or Christine, you touched on that, shirt size, etc. Complete mismatch. But again, what is the standout factor? What's going to stop other competitors from coming in and eating your lunch? If you start putting in your annual reports 65% growth, ROI 34%, everyone else is going to be looking and go, I'm going to do that too. Where in your strategy says, this is going to make it successful, I'm going to stop the other competitors? What's your competitive advantage?
I believe that competition, you can't actually eliminate competition, but we try to actually give Marks and Spencer a competitive edge, especially in terms of actually understanding your customer and customizing and personalizing everything you're offering to them. And basically, I guess with time and while you try to adapt and change your offerings, we will be able hopefully to target the specific customer and actually have a competitive edge over the competitors.
Right.
But
Jolie, can I just challenge you on that one?
Of course.
I'm going to zero in on it, because this seems to be crucial to me, is every Business 101 textbook talks about competitive advantage. You're talking about customizing your product offering for the market.
Yeah.
But isn't that what Tesco are doing? Isn't that what Walmart are doing? Where's the competitive advantage? Because I want to invest in you. When I see these figures that you projected, 65%, 34.5%, hey, I'm on board. But what's going to make those figures come true? Where's your competitive advantage?
We believe on the short term, as we said, we are going to leverage our partnerships. This will make use of our data accessibility and data infrastructure. This will help us, with our personalization techniques. Maybe we can have the edge here over other competitors from that dimension. And on the long term, if we can implement blockchain, as my partner Christina earlier mentioned, this will definitely give you the edge. If you can make a partnership with Alibaba, for instance, since the global trend now is moving towards blockchain. If you can leverage that, and Walmart is not doing it currently in China, no one is currently planning it. If you can actually grab this opportunity and leverage it, this will provide you with great opportunities and great growth rates.
Okay, I'll just change tack a bit, and perhaps Christina, you can help me out with this one. I think it was you that mentioned that you had the squeezed middle. You've got some at the top, some at the bottom, and Marks and Spencer's current, or Peter, sorry, if maybe. You were in that middle. Isn't that a declining class in China?
Technically,
as it is globally. So why are you targeting that particular market?
Technically, it is a declining class, but what we're trying to do is basically by becoming more locally relevant, understanding the middle class. It's declining and becoming more upper class and lower class. So our product offering in this case, to be more locally relevant, we actually suggested at some point maybe partnering with local designers who would make affordable luxury products in this case, which would look more give the face value of what they look like. They're more than they cost, or they're more than what they actually are worth, which is what exactly the Chinese people are, because they're into luxury items or luxury statements, for example. So this would actually help them psychologically accept it, as well as because they have more disposable income. Since they're spending less on smaller items, it will keep them coming back to us to buy more and more items, which would make them more fashionistas.
Isn't there a risk of mismatch in your strategic strategy in terms of market positioning, in the sense that Marks and Spencer is day to day? It's what you buys. It's safe, reliable, everyday stuff. But if you try and get into the luxury market, it's not the brand which is known for luxury.
It's not the brand itself, but it's technically how it has to kind of adapt, and it doesn't have to go exactly into luxury market and compete on a luxury level like Louis Vuitton and LVMH, for example, are carrying. But it could try to compete with, at least, for example, if you take one of your direct competitors, Zara. Zara has, for example, the basic collection, and they have the collection which is the thrift store collection. The basic collection looks more luxurious and gives more worth to a person when they wear it. So if we focus on differentiating the collections, basically, being more locally relevant, more tailored to the people, more fast changing, more based on their trends, I think this could actually work on the people's class issue of how they dress and what they like to wear.
Isn't there a risk that you're just copying Zara's strategy? If they're fast moving, bringing product to market, tailoring with local producers, they're already doing that. Aren't you just copying them?
If I may add, it's not copying, because it's a strategy used by many retailers. For example, H&M uses the same strategy. It's a marketing strategy in order to be able to target many types of customers, and in that way you can target the low end, the high end, and the middle end.
But aren't you just telling me what other people are doing? So your whole presentation is then saying, let's do what others are already doing.
No, we're telling, in our opinion, this is a strategy that has been proved to be successful. And this is why we're suggesting it to you, because it can be successful for you as well. But this is not the whole base of our strategy. Our strategy considered many other things that would also help you get this competitive edge. And I know you were saying that many other competitors can enter the market, but this is easier said than done, because you already entered Chinese market and it wasn't going that well. So it's all about getting efficiency in the operations and in the way you're doing things in order to actually be successful with the strategies you're using.
If I may add to what Christina is saying, concerning you operate in different segments. And in the case, also from general knowledge, we know that Zara, H&M, these models work. And also in the case, they say that they're extremely successful in China. So we thought it's fine to benchmark to these successful food retailers. And then we proposed other stuff based on the business model overall of the retailer. So the clothing part is only one part of our strategy, which we believe we should benchmark with these extremely successful players in the Chinese market. They're attaining huge margins, and they're sustainable over the long term. So that's one part, and we also enhance our value proposition through other stuff. And as we earlier mentioned, we can even induce more innovations on the long term.
Exactly. Like, if I may add on
Let me ask you a question. Actually, let's take a different tack, right? Because I'm very skeptical about all the numbers. Walk me through 3 points of time where you'll say, because you need to find a partner, blockchain, you need to do way too many things. Give me 3 points of time where you're going to say, cut my losses, go back to my home market.
Okay, so 3 times to just decide that.
Just what would be 2 or 3 factors or, events that will make you think this is just not working? Because ultimately I'm a shareholder, I care about profitability.
Yeah.
Everything else is right.
Yeah. Basically, in this case, like there's a huge risk here if your margins don't enhance over the short term. Like usually they say if your margins are negative on the short term and your revenues are not making up your variable expenses, then you should immediately shut down or retreat from the market. This is a huge threat here. However, we believe using our strategy we can mitigate that risk if we enhance this value proposition. However, if for any reason or external market factors this doesn't work out, this should be like a red light. We shouldn't enter this market anymore.
In the short term or the long term?
No, in the short term. If the margins don't improve,
improving margins in a short term where you've had 5 years of decline, that seems to be a very short-sighted strategy compared to what you're telling me.
Yeah, of course. On the long term, of blockchain, we believe it will work. However, if it's also closed from all dimensions, then it's beyond our capability. But for this specific case, we believe that in the short term we can mitigate those risks, and even on the long term we can even have better innovations which will help us even capitalize.
So the first point is margins. Next.
Yeah. First point is margins. It's all related to margins, profitability. And second, if blockchain may provide to be too difficult to implement, if Alibaba is not offering any cloud services, and we plan to mitigate that by partnering with IBM Watson. Not Watson, IBM in general, which is a global player, and this will help leverage us into moving into the blockchain. And if also this doesn't work out, it's closed, then we should exit the industry. And maybe my partners can walk you through a third point.
How much money are we actually investing, right? I mean, going back to the point about sort of as an investor, right? And what is our sort of break point? How much money are we actually talking about from day one, or for the first year? How much are we actually?
We're investing in social media. That's the bulk of our investment right now, and also we're investing in the cloud services and through the partnership with IBM when we are leveraging AI and machine learning into our operations. This will cost us a bulk for the short term. However, also if you choose to enhance even your marketing efforts over the years, these costs will increase proportionally.
So we talk a lot of money, or just sort of?
This is relatively feasible. It's not a lot of money. Social media, advertising on WeChat, on Taobao, this is like feasible in this case.
Right. So leading on to this is what is our right to win? Because if it's not a lot of money that we're putting in, so our competitors could also put in the same amount of money. They could actually go into the same growth sort of as you proposed. So has the market actually grown to that size, or are we sort of going back into the zero-sum game?
In this case, we projected these growth rates because also, like we know, as a general business rule of thumb, to grow, you should grow at a rate faster than the industry to achieve good profitability and success. So if the industry is growing at 60%, we projected 65% as for the terminal year at 2021. Based on by that time, we would have enhanced our proposition even further.
Where does that 5% comes from? If the barrier of entry is so low and everybody can adopt the same sort of blockchain or AI, machine learning?
In this case, if I may, in this case, the 5% might come from, especially from the part where we develop a new customer experience in this case. Because as I mentioned earlier, the concept stores is a new type of experience, especially for tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So they would be benefiting from the customer experience, which is the newest trend, where they would actually not have to always walk out carrying the items. They would be benefiting from it's quick, it's easy shopping, there's no worry about not finding the quantity, the size, because you'd have everything in store, as I mentioned, and then it would just be delivered to your house. So it's easier, and it would be delivered in a matter of mere hours, basically, from the warehouse to the house.
Sort of what all retailers are making now, like such as Amazon, they are personalizing experiences. That's how they grab the customers from other competitors. And we believe we have the ability, we can leverage this capability to personalize our products for the consumers to give them what they want.
And if I may add, since we're the first ones implementing this blockchain for the retail industry in China. This partnership with Alibaba, which is already a major player, could give us a kind of exclusivity in order for other competitors not to do the same thing we're doing with this blockchain.
Well, that's assuming you can get the contract with Alibaba to do that.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for